What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Clear the Cash. I'm Nate. You can find me on Twitter at an outraged Jew. And of course, I'm with Jesse. You can find him on Twitter at planet_fatness. Jesse, we've been getting lots and lots and lots of response from people that listen to the show as the show has began to grow, rightfully so, because the hobby is growing at an exponential rate that I don't think anybody can really figure out like what its ceiling is. We get DMs all the time. We get messages on Twitter. We get responses on Patreon, comments on Reddit. And as it grows, we have to sort of expand what our show is. And we've talked about making it more actionable and more social and adding bits and pieces to it. So, Jesse, thus far, are you getting a lot of interaction from listeners of the show?
For sure. I'm getting questions all the time about card purchases and if I think something's a good value, or I just bought this, do you think this can appreciate? I'm still getting some collegiate cards here and there, and we've kind of mentioned those as maybe not something you'd want to particularly invest in, maybe as like a PC thing, but not so much as an investment vehicle. But yeah, I'm getting like, no joke, I'm probably interacting with people, with like just random people, either listeners of ours or just people on Instagram or Twitter about cards for probably like, I don't know, 2 hours.
That's incredible.
So.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome to see the growth just amongst this base of listeners, since they know that they can reach out to a person like you that's very experienced, that has lots of answers, that's responsive. So again, guys, if you have in-depth questions or a nuanced question, I'm certainly willing to answer it to the best of my ability. But Jesse is by far the expert on this show. He's my Moses. I'm following him. He's parting the Red Sea, and we're walking right down the middle. And that's good because we're both part of the tribe. So, Jesse, I've got a tweet here from Gary V, of course, the straw that stirs the drink. And once again, he is motivating the market, might be the phrase to use. Let me read this to you and let me get your opinion on sort of what he's attempting to do with this, because we talked a little bit pre-show, and I think that this is not a tactic that should be looked at negatively. I think that this is a very positive move that he's making, but let me read the tweet and let me get your opinion on it. Gary V tweets 21 hours ago. We do very relevant stuff on the show. Doing a ton of homework on sports and Pokemon, etc. cards this holiday. Seeing some glaring opportunities. Many so focused on the now, they can't see the obvious tomorrow. Some serious underrated cards out there, ... Some serious overrated, overpriced cards out there. Fun. Jesse, what in the world is Gary V doing with these ambiguous tweets just into the ether?
I think 100%. I think he learned his lesson from the spring and summer, where he would show specific cards that he has in his collection, or mention specific players' names, or, oh my God, player X he's like a top 5 player ever in his position in that sport. Like, how were his cards so cheap? So he saw that he was kind of unintentionally but artificially manipulating that player's market. So he's kind of intentionally being ambiguous now, just to kind of get the hobbies and the market's creative juices flowing, to kind of see if we can find out these values ourselves. And he's a big guy on pure investment. So he does speculate here and there, I'm not going to lie, but he's mentioned himself that it's probably no more than 10 to 15% of his overall card investing portfolio. So he's big on, all-time greats or vintage cards, really rare kind of out there vintage cards. Hall of Fame players that are kind of underappreciated, because he's seeing other Hall of Fame players in that same position group. Their prices are kind of going up, but But maybe there's like a certain guy that's kind of not really talked about or forgotten about. So he's seeing a lot of opportunity in guys like that, maybe like an all-time running back or something. So, I mean, this tweet, I like what he's doing because it's kind of like a catalyst for the rest of the hobby in terms of getting people to go find out the deals for themselves. He's not specifically pumping any one card. He realizes, the type of ability or the capability that he has in, driving card prices unintentionally. So I think it's good overall for the hobby when we see tweets like this from somebody as successful as Gary.
And there is so much more to the market than football and basketball. I mean, you have hockey, you have racing cars, you have soccer, you have UFC, MMA, wrestling, golf. There is so much to this that he may also be alluding to the fact that, as you said, like legends, that doesn't preclude all-time great wrestlers. I mean, there's just crazy depth to this. It's all about, in the end, it truly is about having sort of these vintage cards, these rare cards. As we get further and further along the line, it's better to have like these serial cards, because the reality of the situation is they're making lots of cards. More people are aware the hobby's grown. People are taking care of their cards unlike they did in the past. And there's a lot of different cards out there. So I agree with you. I think that what Gary's doing is incredibly positive, and he's just trying to motivate the market, keep it going, have people do some research, because a lot of people are sort of leaning on other people, leaning on Gary, I mean, I showed you an eBay auction just the other day. Somebody literally put Gary V's name in the title of the card, and we joke that there's probably some guy out there that's literally typing Gary V into an eBay search bar and hitting enter and going, oh, he vouched for player X, I should buy player X. So he's certainly motivating things, and I don't look at this as a negative at all. I think he's continuing to push the hobby, and he is certainly in the very forefront of everything. So it helps us when guys like this do what they do, and it makes it fun. It's a scavenger hunt. What's he talking about? In 3 days, is he going to come out and go, guys, the cards that I was saying were underrated are these cards. Did you guys go and find them? These, or maybe there's an event coming up that he's aware of, or, just it could be any number of things. So I do appreciate what he's doing, and certainly appreciate your take on it, because Jesse, you are certainly somebody who's very much ahead of the curve in general. You are tomorrow's newspaper today, though you may not be out there tweeting it. You should be, so we can get that follower count up. Guys, follow Jesse at planet_fatness. He's one of the best at this. But you are an active purchaser. Okay, there's a lot of guys on Twitter, on Reddit that I've seen that they buy cards. They occasionally buy cards, but you are actively purchasing, cards that do certainly have value, not necessarily low-end cards, but some premium cards as well. So you understand what's worth flipping, what's worth holding, and you've made a lot of moves in the past where you have acquired cards prospectively with the mentality that if this guy goes down, if this player starts playing inefficiently, then this player behind them is the guy that I want to own. And you most recently did this with Marcus Mariota, which I want you to talk about. And for all of us that had Derek Carr out there, after you started him, after his dick fell off, this is the pain that we felt. All of us got killed in fantasy. We got slayed in fantasy. Shout outs to Derek Carr and his unit, but Marcus Mariota was a great hold. What has happened since the injury to Derek Carr?
So just to kind of get things started, the reason why I bought into Marcus Mariota in the first place, I bought into him quite a while ago, probably back in July. And the reason I bought into him in the first place was, one, I think right before I started buying Cam Newton cards, and I didn't buy many. I think I only bought like 2 or 3. And it was kind of bizarre to see him be a free agent as long as he was, and nobody, like, the rumors were kind of like not really going anywhere. So I thought, I can get like a pretty rare Cam Newton rookie card for less than like $100 in PSA 10 conditions. So I kind of jumped on those, and then as soon as as soon as he signed with the Pats, that buy window was kind of done from there for Cam. So I was kind of thinking, what are other players that in the league that that aren't really being that nobody's paying attention to, especially like totally like underrated quarterbacks or backup quarterbacks. So the first guy I initially thought it was Marcus Mariota. And I'm admittedly not a huge Derek Carr fan. He's kind of proving me wrong this year. I think he's had like an overall solid season, but I legitimately thought with the amount of money that the Las Vegas Raiders paid Mariota this past offseason, I thought they paid him that money to actively compete against Derek Carr to try to take that starting job from Derek Carr. Unfortunately, I was wrong. But luckily, I'm not gonna lie. For like 2 or 3 weeks, I went on a huge spending spree with Marcus Mariota. I would just find his Topps Chrome base refractor, different refractors, PSA 10 and BGS 9.5s out there for dirt cheap. I'm talking like, the average PSA 10 I was spending between $20 to $30 on. BGS 9.5 I'm spending like $10 to $15 on. So these cards weren't expensive. That's about the price that it takes to even get the card slabbed. So I thought, my risk on these cards is almost nothing. I mean, they could go to zero if like whatever he suffers like a career ending injury and like a practice for whatever reason. But that was kind of my reason behind buying him. It didn't work out in the beginning of the season because Carr was named the starter. He didn't go down with an injury, but I was patient. I held on. I was kind of like peeking at Mariota's prices here and there just to see if there were any like random spikes, but there weren't. And all of a sudden, this past Thursday night, I get out of work pretty late, and all of a sudden I'm seeing like Mariota has a stat line like in general, like for the game. So I messaged Nate immediately. I'm like, what the hell happened is Derek Carr like hurt? Like, or what the hell, like, did he suck? What the hell happened? He's like, yeah, you're like, yeah, groin injury. Like he's probably out for the rest of the game. Like they just rolled him out. So I'm thinking to myself like, oh my God, I have 20 Marcus Mariota cards at home. And I probably got to get moving because I don't know the extent of Derek Carr's injury. I don't know if it's just like a 1 week thing and he could easily come back in week 16 and then Mariota's prices go back to what they were like, probably around the price that, I originally bought them. So as soon as I get home, it takes me like an hour to list all 20 Marcus Mariota cards on eBay. And I'm seeing Nate, I even took a screenshot for you about the amount of people that are actively looking at Marcus Mariota's rookie 2015 Topps Chrome base PSA 10s. It was something ridiculous. Like 300 people were looking at these cards per hour. It was nuts. Like I saw more Marcus Mariota cards sell that day than I've ever seen. So I didn't hesitate to list all 20 of mine. That night I sold like 8 of them. And the next day I sold 10. And I'm fortunate enough to say that I profited on them. I have pretty well especially for the time being. Like honestly guys, like I was looking at like a slight loss before this. And then, I just kind of turned like $300 of profits out of nowhere. For that amount of cards. It doesn't sound like a ton of money for the amount of cards that I'm flipping, but they were cheap to begin with. I wasn't gonna, I'm okay getting less than like $100 a card or what, like per card. So, when you have the opportunity to move on from kind of crazy like out of nowhere spikes for guys like Mariota and maybe some other guys we'll probably talk about at some point, you got to take advantage. And I'm still down to just 2 cards left. I could just hang on to these if I want, if he's going to start for the next couple weeks and just wait to see how he does. I'm kind of already in the green, so these cards are I'm playing with house money at this point. But yeah, it can pay off for sure sometimes, seeing how you can profit from speculative
I
buys.
mean, the story of you having a stronghold on the Marcus Mariota market alone is a hero's tale, But to sell 18 of them over the course of just days is.
I sold 18 in like 36 hours. I don't know if I've ever sold 18 cards
Well,
in
I mean,
36 hours of any player.
It's a great example of how quick the flip happens. And I think one of the most important things that you mentioned was how many views per hour you were getting on a player that essentially, to this point in his career, was considered a bust, was purely a backup who just came in a spot, oddball start because Derek Carr and his unit fell to the sidelines. So here you are, and Marcus Mariota's value spikes. Now, he could absolutely disappear into the oblivion once again. It's entirely possible. He had multiple years in Tennessee to get it together. It never really happened. Sometimes it's a fit. Sometimes it's a player in one location versus another. We're going to talk about other quarterbacks here in a second that have played for one team that we believe if they go to the next location could have a giant spike in value as well. But here's a question for you, someone for me, and I'm thinking like cryptocurrency as well, where the value of stuff can change so frequently and you want to get things out of your hand as fast as possible to turn a profit. What's really the process on eBay of selling these cards? And I realize you're selling the same card over and over and over again for the most part. Change may have been, the quality of the card, PSA versus BGS or whatever. But what's the process of listing these cards on eBay?
My favorite thing to do is rather than create the listing myself, I'll type in the card. So all right, so I had a bunch of 2015 Topps Chrome Marcus Mariota PSA 10s. What I'll do is I'll filter the recently sold cards. So I'll go to the sold tab. I'll pick one of the most recent ones that was sold, and if you click on the listing that just ended, there should be an option that says sell one like this. So I'll click on sell one like this, and the title will be the exact same of that listing that just sold. So I can customize it however I want. I'll obviously add my own images of the card. And what I like to do is I'm not a big auction guy unless if I think a card can appreciate more over the course of like a week or 10 days or whatever. I'm more of if I list something on eBay, I like to list it as buy it now or best offer. Or if I'm like really firm on a price and if it's like an easy card to move, like a rookie Luka or a rookie Trey, I might have a fixed price. I won't have the or best offer, but usually for cards like this, I'll have the or best offer option selected. And yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. If I have multiples of something, I won't hesitate to just kind of include them all in that single listing. So I put the card title, the condition, everything else. I'll put QTY in there or quantity at the very end, so that people know that I have multiples of these of this card. So, and then in the description, I'll just add something quickly, like just so I don't get like BS offers, like prices per card. It's not for the whole set or anything. But yeah, I mean, I haven't had too many issues selling this way. It takes a lot of the legwork out yourself if you just kind of like, if you go to the sold listings tab and you click on one of the listings and you kind of take, a lot of the legwork out, because, you kind of have the template already set up for you. It's just a matter of you actually putting in the pictures of the cards yourself and customizing the pricing and the title.
I think that's a pretty profound way to do it, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't have as much experience as you selling, but I think that idea alone of sell one like this, it gives you essentially the title. You're building quick and easy because you do have to move fast. I mean, you knew that the market was hot that night when you got off of work, and if you would have waited, I mean, look, you've got two that haven't sold, right? Okay, if you had waited 36 hours to list the cards, what might have happened? You literally took the emotion of people that just watched the game and rode that wave. I mean, you had people that were literally like, oh my God, Marcus Mariota, yes, Mike, he is the guy. And they went to eBay and they bought all your cards. It's such an incredible story. I mean, even if you only made $300-$400 off of it, that profit allows you now to hold on to the two cards that you have, like you said, and sell them or do what you want. and then reinvest that into something even better. And like we've talked about so many times, there are plenty of NBA guys that are floating near that range that are going to double their value in season. So you can have a lot of fun with that money. With that being said, though, Jesse, the idea of being early and not late on players is everything. And there's a bunch of names that we want to bring up that we believe is incredibly actionable, that people should certainly be looking at these players. There are a lot of superstars in here, and I think people may or may not realize what their value is right now relative to their peers that are at sort of the top of the price point. And in football, unlike baseball and basketball, quarterback is sort of the singular king. I mean, we believe that running back, tight end, receiver through the fantasy game, as it sort of melds with the card game, more of these skill position players are going to find more and more value as it goes along. But to have a rare quarterback card versus a rare running back card, when you look at the two prices, the quarterback is 8 times the value. I mean, they're so much more expensive. So I'm going to throw a name at you, and let's talk about this. Here's a relatively young quarterback, probably more a product of a bad situation than the fact that he may or may not actually have the talent, and that's Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold is signed until the end of 2022. So he's still got time left on his contract. The odds are that Trevor Lawrence is going to the New York Jets with the first pick in the NFL draft, which means Sam Darnold is then expendable still on a rookie contract. Lots of beat reporters out there are talking about the Jets expect to get a first-round pick for Sam Darnold, and that wouldn't shock me at all. I mean, we've seen it happen with other quarterbacks here recently. I believe Rosen went for a first, right? Just recently off of Arizona's hand. I think he did. It was a second.
I think it
was a second.
Yeah,
okay.
I think it was a second or like 2
That's
seconds
right.
or something.
So the belief, though, is that Sam Darnold is going to go for a first-round pick, and there are a lot of potential situations out there. People are bringing up the Colts. People are bringing up Washington. People are bringing up the Steelers. New England is another one of these names. So there's a lot of places that could boost his value. But would you agree that his prices are probably pretty low relative to some of the other names around him? Because just looking at the numbers that I've looked at currently, he's going right now. He's trading for about $70 to $75 for a PSA 10 base Prism, and you've got other quarterbacks that I think we both think probably aren't going to last that are going for way more. So, what are your thoughts on a guy like Sam Darnold?
I love Sam Darnold as a buy right now. Probably going through like maybe January, February, until he, moves to another team. I'm not gonna lie. I bought one Sam Darnold rookie. It was an Optic Hollow, rookie Optic Hollow PSA 10 for probably over $200. That thing is. It's plummeted in value. I think the last one sold for like $85 or something. So I'm looking at a loss right now there, but I'm fairly confident that he's probably going to either be moved to. I know New England likes him. I know Bill Belichick likes him, or the Colts, and those are probably the two places that I'm kind of wanting him to move to, but. I don't think there's going to be that much better of a time to buy Sam Darnold than through like February or something, like now through February, because I mean, there's you could, I don't think we've quite hit the floor yet. Like his base Prism PSA 10 could probably go to like, I don't know, $50 or something before then. So that's possible, but I think you're still looking at a profit as soon as he's dealt to another team, whether you buy now or whether you buy like a month from now. So I myself, I mentioned this to you pre-show that I'm probably going to start looking into Darnold a little bit more myself, whether it be his Prism or Optic Hollow or some of his like silver selects, just to kind of get my. I kind of do look at this from like a stock market or like a financial portfolio perspective, where I kind of want to get my. If a player's prices drops, I want to get my average share price down as much as possible if I'm still confident in that player. And just from the sheer prospect of him being moved out of New York, I think it's a fantastic time to buy into somebody like
Yeah,
Darnold.
Darnold could be one of the guys that really ascends from the worst situation in the NFL. There are next to no other situations that are quite as awful as this one is. And it's not like things are going to get easier for Sam Darnold. I mean, you look at his strength of schedule this year, it was difficult. Coaching disarray, no wide receiver weapons, offensive line is garbage. They are clearly tanking. I think there was a play against Las Vegas like 2 weeks ago where, did you see the blown coverage on the touchdown to Henry Ruggs at the end of the game? And they basically just said that the way that the play was run, it was clearly tanking. The corner and safety were out of position. And they're like, there was only, I think there was 10 seconds left on the clock. I can't remember. I'm probably quoting this inaccurately. But they essentially blew the game because they were winning. And they're like, well, we don't want to fucking win. Like, what good is it if we've got a win or a few wins on the year? We only hurt ourselves in the future. So this team is clearly tanking. And they know that their advantage is that Sam Darnold is sort of a prize to be had for another team, and he has value, and he very well could go for a first-round pick. So if they get the quarterback of the future that they want, and many people out there believe that Trevor Lawrence is quite possibly the best quarterback prospect we've seen. I mean, there's people that are saying, yeah.
I'm hearing since
I mean,
Manning.
exactly. Like leapfrogging Andrew Luck. Like that's what's happening right now. Like this guy is the guy, and he's going to be the savior in New York. So with that being said, I would rather buy Sam Darnold before we get to the point where people wake up and realize that the Jets are moving on from him, despite the fact that he's still on the payroll. They are very clearly going to go after Trevor Lawrence, and all the buzz articles start getting written and all the news on the local radio and national media. And then all of a sudden everybody goes, oh, well, that means that Darnold's going somewhere else. And then all of a sudden the Belichick-Darnold connection comes up and all these things start coming up. And then we watch that value rise artificially, even while still on the Jets roster. And that's when you're no longer getting a profit. So I think that's why we like Darnold right now, because he's still sort of laying low. His schedule is still not easy. He'll probably still not play well. He still doesn't have weapons. He's still handing the ball off to Frank Gore 14 times a game. This is the worst. This is the absolute worst. I mean, so bad. Okay, so let's move on. We've got a couple more really interesting quarterback names here. And this is a name that, again, you and I talked about sort of off show. What about Jacoby Brissett? Because we've seen Brissett come in unexpectedly to start and play well. I mean, play above replacement level at times. What are your thoughts on Jacoby Brissett and the potential that he could end up elsewhere?
I'm not gonna lie, I don't know what he's signed through in while he's still with the Colts. But I mean, his cards can't get much cheaper than they are right now. Like when I was kind of in this speculative backup quarterback or free agent quarterback buying spree in the summer, I picked up a couple of Jacoby Brissett cards just from the sheer fact that either Philip Rivers just doesn't have it anymore, and he could get benched at any minute. And the Colts, they maybe defensively they're good, but their offense isn't going to be doing anything. So, I kind of speculatively bought him there, or just from like maybe a potential Philip Rivers injury. I think he's honestly like, I don't see too much of a difference between Jacoby Brissett and Teddy Bridgewater in terms of like a placeholder quarterback in the NFL. And those guys can still be valuable. Like Teddy Bridgewater's prices this past offseason, he was a really hot card. I'm going to be totally honest. His prices went up substantially after he signed with Carolina, and with Matt Rule being there, and with the crazy amount of weapons that Bridgewater has offensively. So I don't really see Jacoby Brissett being all that different than somebody like a Bridgewater. I mean, obviously he's not a guy that you want to hold on to long term. So as soon as he gets a starting job or is thrust into a starting job either in Indy or somewhere else, I think you have to kind of take your profits and walk away. But you're not going to get his cards much cheaper than they are right now. Like I spent maybe $20 to $25 on his Prism Silver Rookie and Select Silver Rookie, and I believe both of those cards recently sold for like $10. So they're selling for less than it costs to get it slabbed. So it's it's another speculative buy. I probably wouldn't spend more than I don't even know what dollar amount, but I wouldn't get more than a couple. But if you're looking for free money at some point, just with the speculation that he could go to another team, or as soon as he gets he's thrust into a starting job somewhere, it's not a bad way. It's not a bad cheap way to
Yeah, I
go.
mean the Jacoby Brissett Prism PSA 10 silvers are selling for like $15. And he's a guy that, I mean, you can search his name. He is a free agent at the end of this year, and he has been tied to teams like the Denver Broncos. We've seen this with, we're going to mention another quarterback here in a second, Nick Foles going to Chicago. We've seen sort of high-end backups, Fitzpatrick's in Miami. They still draft Tua. We've seen these names show up in the past. That's that sort of backup competition. And if Drew Lock continues to play inefficiently and Jacoby Brissett signs with Denver, it'll make it more difficult to get a value out of him because much like what we've seen with Mariota, I think there's going to be an expectation that there will be a change at quarterback because this guy's inheriting Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, right? Noah Fant. All these guys are in this wide receiver group on this team, and he's inheriting all these weapons. And we've seen Brissett play relatively well. Again, this guy was never proclaimed to be some elite talent at the quarterback position, despite being drafted in the third round. But he had a season in 15 games, 18 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 61% completion percentage. Good, not great in Indy. But maybe in a different situation, he could be, a little more exciting. And his card value can only go up, really, if he goes somewhere else. And if it is to a place like Denver, then that makes him exciting as well. But I've already let the cat out of the bag, not the bear out of the bag. Nobody puts a bear in a bag. But Mitchell Trubisky. Listen, I appreciate the name Mitchell, but if that was my name, I'd go by Mitch. So we're going to go Mitch Trubisky. There is rumors, and I have a tweet here. I'm going to give the guy credit, even though he's like nobody in the world. He does have a check mark. I think it was on like Dancing with the Stars or something crazy. But it's so bad. But his tweet nonetheless does shine a light on something that you can find online that really does sort of correlate with what he said. But he said, today is the most important Bears game of the year. If they win big, GM Ryan Pace, Coach Matt Nagy, and Mitch Trubisky may all be back next year. If they lose, they could all be gone. Well, there's a lot of sentiment that agrees with that on the internet. Currently, Trubisky, 10 completions, 109 yards, 1 touchdown as it stands right now. We all want him to go elsewhere because we want A-Rob things to get better, but A-Rob is also a free agent. His name may come up here in a moment. But Mitch Trubisky, right now, his PSA 10 Prism is selling for $75 to $80. $75 to $80. Mitch Trubisky, rightfully so, has not been good since being drafted a few years ago. He appears to be turning the corner now. He does look like a different player. And if Chicago does extend him, if they decide to extend Mitch Trubisky because he fits the system that they want to play and they keep the GM and the head coach stick around, does he seem like another guy that might be a prospective buy low player, considering a guy like Drew Lock right now is selling for $275, $370? He had a PSA 10, no bullshit, sell in December for $700, Drew Lock.
Do you know what card that was?
I'll look it up again. I think it was a
700?
base Prism.
That's so crazy. Oh my God. I can't believe people are spending that money on Drew Lock right now. But yeah, Trubisky, I mean, it's in the realm of speculation, I guess, with the type of purchases that we've been talking about. I mean, obviously, out of the 3 guys that we've mentioned, Darnold is for sure my favorite. Brissett's kind of like the super speculative guy, but Trubisky, I mean, honestly, if they win today, they could all 3, Pace, Nagy, and Trubisky could all return. I don't see Nick Foles being the starter for the foreseeable future. So it's probably going to be Trubisky's team, unless if they like desperately try to get rid of him and but assuming Ryan Pace stays, I don't think they're going to move on from Trubisky. But yeah, I mean he's definitely a way to go. His prison prices probably aren't quite at their basement price right now, but once football card prices start to drop in like January, February, when the number of teams that are still in contention go down significantly. Trubisky's not a bad speculative buy. His Prism based PSA 10 prices have reached triple digits, I think, in this past offseason, just purely on, again, speculation. So there's definitely an opportunity to make a quick buck or two. But yeah, I mean, he's definitely a gamble, but it can't hurt having a couple of his Prism based cards or select cards just in your inventory at the
And
moment.
just a correction on that Drew Lock. I have a list over here. That was off the silver base Prism, which makes more sense, but still
Even
too
so,
high.
that's still crazy.
It's,
That's
it's
so nuts. Dude, I can get a Julio Jones National Treasures rookie RPA like for half that price. Like that's so nuts. That's like going off the Justin Jefferson raw Prism Silver that you mentioned a couple weeks ago about like that was like $600. That's a little too rich for me for Drew Lock. That might be the highest like you know silver Prism PSA 10 that
there's
like we've
some
seen,
people out there that like
honestly.
a little spice, and this is how they live their life, Jesse. It's
Spicy. It's
spicy.
spicy.
Let's move on to another name here. So here's a name of a player that I think this year many fantasy owners are incredibly down on, and rightfully so, because his situation changed pretty suddenly in an offense that there was a lot of belief behind, especially in fantasy football. And there was actually, there was thoughts that this team was going to contend potentially for a title, or they were at least going to be in the running. And since then, things have definitely taken a turn for the worse. And I am talking about Ezekiel Elliott. So, Jesse, people are down on Elliott, and I personally believe that the big reason why his current value in his cards, which a base Prism silver for Ezekiel Elliott right now, a silver is going for $140 in December. Christian McCaffrey, who's played 3 games this year, his cards are going for $340, $360, so twice that number. But again, I think what people are not baking into this is that over the first 5 weeks of the year, when Ezekiel Elliott was still playing with Dak Prescott, which is the very clear change in his profile, the guy had 3 top 7 finishes, and of the 5 games, all the finishes were in the top 15. He was the RB3, the RB7, the RB4, and then 13 and 15. And then Dak goes down, and since then, we've seen a change: 18, 39, 35, 30, 57, 33, 18. Like, it's very obvious what's changed. The quarterback play has been awful in Dallas. Zeke Elliott signed a massive contract just 2 years ago. He's still young. Zeke Elliott's 25 and a half years old. Is it that Zeke Elliott doesn't have the juice anymore? And if you don't think that's true, does that mean that his prices are just too low right now?
I think he's out of the running backs that are obviously still playing. He's probably one of the better ones to invest in. I see people who are big into investing and flipping. They're still pumping Christian McCaffrey, even believe it or not, McCaffrey's prices are actually down, even though he's still that expensive right now, obviously due to injury. But yeah, Zeke is kind of the guy that slept on. I'm seeing people pump CMC, Dalvin Cook, Derek Henry, other running backs that are absolutely killing it right now. But nobody's talking about Zeke Elliott. And the interesting thing that I mentioned to you before about Zeke is his prices. I don't have the graphs in front of me, but I'm positive that his prices fluctuate as Dak Prescott's prices fluctuate. Dak's prices in the offseason, you'd be able to get his Prism Silver PSA 10 rookie for in the $300 range. I saw those prices peaked around maybe, I don't know, $1,100, $1,200. So, and I mean, Zeke's a running back, so obviously his prices aren't going to, kind of reach the $1,000 range, but they are going to go in the same direction that Dak Prescott's prices are going. So, assuming they keep Dak going into 2021, we're gonna see Zeke's prices fluctuate just as Dak's prices fluctuate, and there's going to be a lot of hype on Dak. I don't think he's that far. He's not that far behind from a full recovery. I mean, I'm sure he has a couple months ahead of him, but season doesn't start until September of 2021, so we definitely have some time to see those prices appreciate. And I think Zeke is honestly, he's probably going to follow Dak's prices. And even if Dallas decides to, tank for this year and move on from Dak, if they get somebody like Justin Fields, I don't think we're going to see much of a difference in Zeke's prices as opposed to him playing with Dak. So, I mean, he's honestly, if you're looking specifically at running backs, Zeke is an awesome buy low right now.
So, Jesse, what if I told you, on the topic of running backs that are worth buying, what if I told you that there's a running back out there whose card prices are still selling $150, $180 below Christian McCaffrey? He's not 24 years old yet. He's in the national spotlight in terms of commercials and presentation. He finished as the RB1 already once in his career. What if I told you a guy like that was available by the name of Saquon Barkley? Would you say that he would be a good buy right now, considering that he has very much been at least removed from the fantasy football spotlight?
I think Saquon Barkley is one of the best buys at running back right now. If you're betting on him kind of having like an Adrian Peterson career trajectory, which even for him, that's a lot to ask for just because of how prolific AP was throughout his career. But I think he can do it. His prices are way lower now than what they were than what they were going for in late August and early September of, through week 2. And this is a guy that we're going to know he's going to be a top 3 running back season after season. So, he's an awesome buy. I'm confident in him long term. I'm not going to lie, with running backs, you do have that injury concern. So that's probably the position group that I'm not really going to hesitate buying in and selling out when I can make a profit. But you're not going to see Saquon's prices be that much cheaper than they are now, even when football card prices start dropping when the season's over.
Yeah, he's certainly one of those names. We've talked about this on previous shows, and Gary Vee was somebody who very much brought it to sort of the forefront of the active card collecting audience. But guys like Saquon Barkley have found themselves, aligning with different sponsors over the years. And again, most notably, we find him here now doing the same yogurt commercials we talked about that Cam Newton was doing, right? Like he's finding himself more and more and more like in the national spotlight on TV, the same way that Baker Mayfield has become this like likable guy that we see on these NFL commercials. And so I believe with Saquon being this, again, young, athletic, good-looking individual, like they're going to continue to put him in front of as many viewers as they can. And the only thing that's stopped him is health. I mean, if he could stay healthy, which again is an if because it's the running back position, this is the type of guy that with the career trajectory that he could possibly have, he could be one of these guys that we see, in New York on the sidelines at Madison Square Garden at an NBA game, and that kind of stuff spins, and now he's hanging out with NBA players, and you get this cultural buzz where a guy like this could be a lot more long-standing than some of these other players that just really are never in the spotlight, that we never hear about. And he's one of these younger athletes. So he becomes one of the names that I would certainly get my hands on if I had the money to spend. And again, right now with him selling at $140, $150, he has to be well below that ceiling. The problem, though, for me at least, is that when we look at NFL cards, and we've talked about this a little more, versus NBA, that ceiling exists, but that ceiling's not as significant as if you were to invest that money plus a little bit into a more notable young player in NBA, right? I mean, isn't that the issue here, that even if you get that jump, even if we get Saquon Barkley as the RB1, what do you expect his card goes from if it's sitting at 140 right now?
I think he could go in the $300 to $400 range, maybe as like a peak, assuming he comes back full health well before the season starts. What he tore, I think he tore his ACL, and it must have been
it
in
was
September,
early, yeah.
right? It couldn't have been later than week 3, yeah. So, he's definitely he has room to grow. I think by the time the season starts, I can't see his Prism base PSA 10 prices being below the $300 range, honestly. So, I mean, the ceiling from an ROI perspective, it's comparable to guys that you can buy and sell in NBA, but maybe from like a raw dollar perspective, you're not going to get nearly as much money buying and selling Saquon as you are, being able to flip some NBA players. But with NBA, the crazy thing is that the market, it's not quite as reactionary as football maybe, because football can be super reactionary after a guy goes off for like 180 yards and 2 or 3 touchdowns, but in NBA, I mean, it can be pretty reactionary too. So I've mentioned this a couple of times before in previous episodes, but I was able to buy into Damian Lillard relatively cheap and then sell immediately after he goes off for 60 points in the bubble. So, and I profited handsomely. I like 3 to 4x my money, just from that one purchase. So yeah, with NBA, offense is everything. Scoring is everything. Defense clearly doesn't matter at the moment if you look at Trae Young's prices. Yeah, NBA. I mean, as soon as you see a guy featured on SportsCenter, that's the first thing you see. Whether it's a game-winning shot or Donovan Mitchell goes off for like 50, 60, 65 points, something ridiculous, and he misses like 1-3 over the course of the entire game. You can see those prices, potentially 2 to 3x like overnight or over the course of like 2 or 3 days.
And that's the thing that like I continue to want to circle back to for people, just because the NBA, the value of cards. So with Saquon, we're talking about his potential from right now. He could 2.5 times his value, where in NBA, I mean, guys could be starting at 300. They could 3 times their number plus that, depending on how well they're playing. And I think too, just in general, when you got a guy in the NFL that plays well, they only play 16 games, and injuries happen. The NBA, typically in a regular world, you're playing 82 games. So there's more games to be played. It's a longer season. But like we've talked about, there are no real flips per se in NBA. I mean, there are guys right now that are, rookies that haven't quite hit yet, or they're a year or two in the league. But for the most part, guys don't get hurt as often. The rosters aren't as big as, as an NFL roster. We know all these players, and the floor of these rookies is already so high. I mean, you look online on eBay, a base Prism raw, not even in a slab, is like more than one of these Saquon cards is going for in a slab.
In a slab.
Like a Prospective purchase of this guy is already more. So, and there is no, we talked about this too, there is no late round guy, right? The NBA draft is 2 rounds. And the guys that we've dug up, we mentioned it. You mentioned Paul Millsap. Again, you got Kukoc and Ginobili, and I guess Marc Gasol might fall in that group too. Yeah, Draymond. There's not that many guys historically, so it's just it's a difficult thing. It's the same argument that I make against some of these guys coming in. Devonta Smith has been my new hot button topic out of Alabama. I like the guy, but you look at his size. We're just talking history here. You look at guys of that size group, difficult to navigate the history to find significant hits. Maybe they have boom-bust weeks. Hard to find a guy over his lifetime that's been great. And if you do, you're essentially doing what we just did, which is naming the 4 or 5 guys out of the last 5,000 draft classes that did it and going, he's going to be one of those 4 or 5 guys. It just makes it too difficult. So I love NBA, but you just have to spend a little more scratch to get into the game, because these guys show up with floors that are already so expensive. One last name amongst the group of prospective names that people should keep an eye on is a wide receiver that you are certainly a fan of. This is a guy that will be a free agent at the end of this year, and there's a lot of different ways to sort of play the game with him. I just wrote an article on Patreon, patreon.com/I'm outraged. I'm telling people to sell this guy in Dynasty, not because I don't think he's a talent, but because I think we're going to hit an apex of value. He's been productive. There's a chance that he goes to a new team, could go to a great team, and we could see his value jump beyond sort of what people already prospectively look at him and think, wow, this is a talented player. He's succeeded despite poor quarterback play over 2 rosters, over multiple seasons, and that's Allen Robinson. Why do you think that Allen Robinson is a buy low?
So it's, it all depends on the quarterback situation, whether he stays in Chicago or if he gets dealt elsewhere. I feel like Allen Robinson trade rumors are becoming like a yearly thing, either at the trade deadline or in the offseason. So yeah, if for sure, like we got to get this guy a good quarterback, or please Trubisky, just be competent and just funnel the ball to him and he'll do totally fine. He'll average 100 yards a game per year. That's fine. But yeah, Robinson, speaking of the Gary V and the eBay title transaction, that was actually the card that was sold that you mentioned to me. It was an Allen Robinson card. Honestly, I don't know if Gary V's been pumping him in the past. Honestly, shame on both the buyer and the seller. The buyer for maybe not doing his or her research, if Gary V actually pumped it, and shame on the seller just in case Gary V never actually pumped him. But yeah, Robinson, honestly, he's one of the more underappreciated wide receivers in the NFL because of the quarterback situation. And if he gets, competent to above average quarterback play, who's to say that he can't approach Devontae Adams prices? Like, and even in fantasy, like, who's to say he can't be a top 3 to 5 wide receiver in any given year? So, like, I'm seeing Devontae Adams Topps Chrome refractors PSA 10s going in the $200 to $300 plus range, while I'm seeing Allen Robinson's being $100 or best offer, and I'm pretty sure I've bought a couple myself for like $70. So that seems way too low for somebody of Allen Robinson's caliber. He might be valued appropriately in Dynasty, but his cards are really being slept
and
on.
That's a good way to put it too. That kind of translates to what it was that I believe in Dynasty, where I think that there's a value here, but we look at the age apex and we look at the production and we go, okay, how much longer can he sustain it? Well, you look at, Devontae Adams, as you brought up. Devontae Adams is basically a full year older than Allen Robinson right now, doing what he's doing. So it's not improbable that we would see Allen Robinson step in and do this as well. Julio is 31. He's done this. We've seen DeAndre Hopkins, 28, 29, do this. So some of these guys are just talented beyond the fact that they're aged, because we see some guys hit the age apex and they disappear. I mean, we see it happen year over year over year, and they just sort of fade into oblivion because they've become too old and the players around them are a lot younger, more athletic. They've kept the speed up. Even though if you're a guy listening to the show and you're 31, you're like, I'm in my physical prime. Well, no, when a guy's like 21, 22 and he's an absolute burner and he's still got that youth with him, they are in their physical prime. So it's not surprised to see a guy like Julio Jones, where the injuries are really what finishes the career. It's not so much that at 31, athletically you can't keep up, because Larry Fitzgerald and other receivers have proved this to be inaccurate. It's sort of the injury bug that keeps up with you and nags and reduces your ability to produce on the field. So I think Allen Robinson is still well within that age group at 27 and some change years old. So he'll still be 27 next year. And you're right. If he goes to the right situation, then the sky's the limit. He's already hit 150 targets multiple times in his career. So why wouldn't that be possible for it to happen again? But this time with a quarterback that has some accuracy, because that's been one of the absolute worst things for him. Right now, his quarterback rating when targeted as playerprofiler.com would show he's 56 wide receiver in the league, considering the fact that he's number 3 in targets right now. It's staggering to hear. So, but the hot potato game with Allen Robinson is that he goes to a bad team and his prices stay the same or maybe dip just a little bit, or he goes to a good team and all these people that have Allen Robinson cards relist them for higher, or the prices just go up even before we see him play. But the assumption is that Allen Robinson is such a good player that we can necessarily make the assumption that good Allen Robinson plus accurate quarterback in functional offense equals very, very relevant top 10, top 5 fantasy wide receiver in the league as a nuanced, experienced veteran player, Jesse. So let's go with a quote here. I'll let you take this right here. We had a patron, Pierre, reach out to you with a question about sort of a philosophical question as he approached it regarding what cards to buy in particular, sort of based on what your long-term vision is or short-term vision is of card collecting. I'll let you take this one away.
So yeah, I've been talking pretty much on a daily basis with Pierre for the last couple of weeks, and if you haven't hit him up either on the Discord group or on his Twitter, I think his handle's at Pierre Fillion. Yeah, he's a really good dude. He'll even he'll hit me up with some listings of cards that, like, if he thinks I'll be interested in them, or like if there have been players that I've told him I'm interested in, like he'll just kind of like scavenge for listings and just hit me up whenever he finds like an either an undervalued one or something that would kind of catch my eye. So he hit me up with this kind of like a hobby philosophy or like strategy idea type quote. And we were just casually talking one day, and I don't know where he mentions. So I'll read it word for word. I think I've stumbled on a philosophical question about sports cards, which I believe you have slightly commented on but never fully addressed. I'm beginning to get the sense that if you take a macro view of card collecting with the angle that you eventually want to make money from it and not die with these cards still in your possession, you should never buy any other cards than rookie cards or something like an RPA. Obviously, there's short-term value in flipping some of these cards each season and all that, but every year, cards and over a long period of time, they can definitely depreciate in value. So holding on to them, unless they are just for like a personal collection, seems like a bad financial move. Also, he goes into buying random patch or auto cards, whether or not they would be significant, of guides that are significant today but might not be significant 5 or 10 years from now. So it's definitely something worth mentioning. So if we haven't touched on this before or on any episode, either Nate on the Breakout Finder Network or under your Patreon page, I apologize. Me personally and many other people in the hobby, we try to go into this with wanting to, if we're looking at this from an investment standpoint, we want a majority of our money to be tied into, all-time great athletes or players who are either on like a surefire Hall of Fame trajectory or have recently retired and are about to go into the Hall of Fame, or like vintage cards, whatever. Those prices in the long run, they're not going to go down. They're going to keep appreciating. So everyone has their own percentage of what exactly they'd want to invest in something like a blue chip stock, somebody like a LeBron or a Jordan or Gretzky or Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, like all-time great players. For me personally, my goal is to probably get 80% of the money that I have tied up into cards into these types of players, or players that I think still have room to grow just because I think they're undervalued. If it's somebody like a Julio Jones or Larry Fitzgerald or Calvin Johnson, um, so it's definitely worth mentioning. Not to say that flipping is bad. There's for sure an opportunity to make money with flips. And what I try to do is with that, 20 to 25% of my portfolio that I have in cards and players that I see as flips, I don't hesitate to, move on from those guys to see if I can further fund some of the cards that I will have in my like long-term personal collection, or cards that I look at as investments. Like Nate, you see me, every so often mention like a LeBron card that I just bought, or I just got like this really nice Patrick Mahomes card. And I'm convinced like he's gonna surpass Brady. Like he's just the GOAT, right? Like as it is, and if he continues to win championships, if he even gets to like half of Brady's number of championships, like I think he's going to be up there just from his level of talent. But yeah, I mean, if you're looking at this to get a good return on investment, for sure, a majority of your portfolio should be tied into guys who will only continue to appreciate in time, and guys who aren't super
And I
speculative.
think that in here, another important thing that he says is just this quote at the end. Also, buying even random patch or auto cards that hold no other significance also seem to be a long-term bad move. And this kind of goes along with the whole collegiate thing. Like, I can't, I honestly can't even count the amount of times that people hit me up about cards, which is awesome. I appreciate it. I really do love that we've got a growing community, but they show me this exact thing right here. They show me this random patch, and I'm guilty of it as well. I've bought cards just like when I was first starting buying cards, and I didn't really sort of funnel. Like we even talk about, like, what kind of buyer do you want to be? What kind of consumer? Do you just want cards to buy cards and you're just burning money? Fine. Okay, do that. If you want to have a long-term collection, like you said, prepare to pony up perhaps on a Mahomes or a LeBron or a whatever. If you're a short-term guy, then yeah, you want these good RPAs, you want these rookie cards. It's a timing thing. But the random patch auto or the, non-significant card, I mean, that's truly the downfall, because again, I have so many people show me and it's like, man, some of these cards, it's like, you shouldn't have bought that, because what's the point? You're stuck with it. And if you're not active, like you were with Mariota, if you're not an active seller, and many people are not like, okay, I'm going to do it right now. This is it. This is my moment. I'm going to step up and do what I have to do to get rid of this card or sell it or anything in life. If you're not that guy, then this is going to be a tough situation, because you do, just like in Dynasty, sometimes, like if you own Mariota in Dynasty, you may very well be moving him if your league allows trades right now, because he has some value. Maybe the Derek Carr owner is concerned about his outcome or whatever, the longevity. And it's like, I got to move him, because if Gruden's like, Carr's better, he's back, Mariota to the bench, then that value just plummets. So it's kind of the same thing. You've got to be a mover and a shaker. And some people just don't really have that inside of them. So if you just want to buy random cards, then buy random cards. But to Pierre's point, and to exactly what you said, I think it really does come down to buying the cards that are going to be the most relevant over time, if that's your goal. And if it's short term, you need to really understand the player, the market, and the situation, and prepare for that big jump that you can take advantage of. But if anything, if you take anything away, don't buy any college cards. No more college cards. Not trying to diminish that market, but I mean, it's always the first thing to get released too, right? Like the college cards are always the first sets to come out.
Yeah, the college cards, the craze is always, there's a lot of hype behind them initially when they come out. I'm even guilty of it too. It was kind of more of a PC thing. I don't really care if the card significantly appreciates over time, or if it just falls to like $10. But I bought a raw Jonathan Taylor collegiate national treasures rookie patch auto out of 49 for like $55, I think, maybe like 2 weeks after the set was released. So, and there weren't like too many of them available on eBay yet, probably just because not a huge amount of boxes were ripped. But that I'm a big JT fan. I probably, as soon as Prism prices start to go back down, I'm gonna start seeing which Jonathan Taylor Prism cards or like rare parallels I can buy for what I think is a decent price, because I'm a fan of him long term, and by for a running back long term, that's kind of like a subjective term, but probably for the next couple of years I'm going to be high on him. So that National Treasure College RPA is just it's a PC card in the meantime. I'll probably end up getting it graded because it's in pretty decent shape. But yeah, I mean, I try not to spend a good portion of my money, probably not more than like a card here or there on collegiate products.
No, it makes sense. And JT is a good play. I mean, that's one of those cases where he's got the longevity behind him, and we know he's probably only going to get better. So it makes a lot of sense. Don't buy the college cards. Pierre is totally right. The rookies and the solid RPAs are definitely what you want to buy if you can afford to buy into the market. Jesse, once again, bang up job. Great episode. Content for days here. Look, go buy these underrated quarterbacks. Do exactly what Jesse did. If you're looking to turn a profit, if you believe you are an active, motivated seller, if you already have a seller rating on eBay, that's good for you as well. But Jesse laid out a pretty easy case for how people can streamline their process of removing cards from their hand. Until next week on Clear the Cache.